All right. Welcome, everybody, into what is now a Film Room Tuesday. If you thought it was great last week, I know you're super pumped for this week. We took the same show and added Mark Bullock. I mean, come on, what are we doing here? Fellas, thank you so much. We're going to learn something today. We got a bunch of plays broken down. So stick around. Let's look at them and let's go. Nick, what start us off here?
Yeah. This first play was the first of three DJ Moore touchdowns. Mark put some beautiful drawings up, better than I ever could. But essentially what you got on defense here is your basic as it could get Tampa 2 coverage. Essentially what that means is you have your cover 2 shell with, these two deep safeties as he drew here, and then another deep safety covering this one. Difference between this is this middle guy, the Tampa defender, has to quote unquote run the pole, which means he will carry anything up the middle of the field here. So essentially, I wanted to point this play out because this is kind of the only really bad zone busted coverage that we kind of saw. This one is put on the safety here, Percy Butler. Essentially, with the way this is drawn up when you have trips here to the field, he should know that the Tampa defender is going to take this seam route up the middle of the field. So he needs to turn more towards the rest of the field to help with these two corners here. He's stuck on that one. DJ Moore's wide open. Pretty easy touchdown.
Nick, real quick, explain to the folks what the difference is between, we talk about boundary corners and field corners, and they're both on the edges. So I worry that some people might not understand the difference.
Yeah. So essentially when the ball is placed on a hash like this, it's almost never going to be in the middle of the field. There's always going to be a wide side and a short side of the field. So right here, the ball is placed on this hash. This is considered the boundary over here because it's the shorter side of the field. And this is called the field. So okay. Kendall Fuller is your field corner. Forbes up here is your boundary corner.
And then Nick, further questioning. So just watching the play one more time, it seems like Cody Barton is doing his natural linebacker, dropping back into that low cover 2 package there. And in your opinion, Percy Butler's has improper positioning, right? He should be more parallel to the line, kind of facing both, kind of observing both wide receivers. Is that what's going on here? It's big bad eye discipline, pretty much.
I think he just needs to be less aware of the inside receiver here and more shaded towards the outside receiver because you have help with the Tampa defender there, so he needs to shade more outside.
Gotcha. Because truly in the cover 2, it's almost like an overhang kind of coverage, right? You're kind of protecting the deep shot regardless over the top.
Yeah, he's got to stay over top all 3 of these defenders or 3 of these receivers, but again, he should know that with this Tampa defender here that he's going to need to help more with the wider 2 wide receivers because Kendall Fuller is just going to sit in the flat. St. Juice is sitting in the hook, curl sort of roll, and he's got to get over the top.
Gotcha. Mark, are you seeing the same thing? What do you think here?
Yeah, well, it's as Nick said, it's a Tampa 2 coverage, and the deep safety is responsible for a deep half, and basically Percy Butler doesn't get anywhere near enough width as he should. You see the safety on the other side of the field, he's out by the numbers, and that's kind of where you're taught to be in a basic Tampa 2 system, is you're taught to get enough width to get out to the numbers, whereas Percy Butler is kind of halfway between the numbers and the hash, and he's quite clearly focused on that number 3 receiver going up the seam, which isn't really his responsibility. It's something that if no one on the outside is going vertical, he could help with, he could squeeze. But that's the whole point of having that Mike linebacker rather than in a normal cover 2, the Mike linebacker doesn't drop. The whole point of the Tampa 2 system was to have that Mike linebacker split those safeties and allow them to get wider. And Percy Butler just doesn't do that on this play. And to me, it's just a mental error. Whether he got the wrong coverage call or he just had a brain fart and decided to try to cover the wrong guy and had his eyes in the wrong place. But yeah, he should be, if you look at where the safety is on the other side of the field, he should be basically mirrored that position on his side of the field, where he's basically outside the numbers or at the bottom of the numbers and in the end zone. So if he's in that spot, that receiver running that slot fade is covered and the quarterback has to go elsewhere.
Yeah, he's kind of screwed the second he turns his body like this. I mean, even if he
Right.
does recognize the other fade towards farther outside, it's going to take a special play for him to kind of flip his hips and get there. The second he turns his body, he's kind of screwed himself.
It's funny how important hips and feet are in these things, and it does kind of sound silly, but yeah, if he's rotated here, it gets a much better look on what's going on. Mark, what happens here with Forrest out now? I'm assuming Butler slides into that spot and he to be on the other side of the field now. What's his responsibility there? And who is this Quan Martin there where he is? Or do you think that'll end up being curl drops and then they bring Quan Martin in early?
I'm not sure exactly how they'll play it out. I think for the most part, it will be Percy Butler just drops in for Forrest in the base packages and Cam Cross stays with the strong safety. When they want to go 3 safeties, then yeah, perhaps Quan Martin gets a look, or maybe that brings Martin into the game as the Buffalo nickel, the kind of position that they originally drafted him for, and Cam Cross stays at strong safety. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of works around, but in a Tampa 2 coverage like this, it's essentially a mirrored coverage. So in this kind of situation, maybe Butler would be on the other side of the field. Maybe he'd be on the same side of the field. He would have the same responsibility. So he'd be needing to play a deep half. And generally speaking, he's pretty good usually at these kind of deep coverages. And he's usually pretty on top of things as the in the 2 deep coverages that they tend to play, whether it's Tampa 2 or quarters and stuff. He's generally pretty on top of things. And I've been saying most of the season, he's usually more on top of that kind of stuff than Forrest is. So in that regard, he's usually better. But in this case, obviously, he wasn't.
Nick, you've got an article coming out later in the week, and I know you've said they're kind of back to doing this, like, not what's best for them. What are we doing here?
Well, essentially, they've kind of changed the way they structure their defense, and they started it a lot at the end of last year, where just kind of how they've lined up. Usually, Kendall Fuller, he used to be when he was signed in 2020, was almost strictly just playing on the right side of the field. It didn't matter where the ball was lined up. It didn't matter what hash, what kind of passing strength or anything like that. He was always on the right side of the field. And then they brought William Jackson in and put him strictly on the left side of the field. We saw how that didn't work out. And then kind of at the start of the end of last season, they kind of switched that and put Kendall Fuller as strictly the field corner. So whatever side the ball is on, he's going to be on the wide side of the field. So now they've put Forbes in on the boundary side. And so it's essentially just kind of forced Kendall Fuller to move around the field more. And he's been fun, other than Thursday. He's been pretty good this year. So it's not so much on Fuller, really, that it is with Forbes, because when he played in college, he was, again, strictly a corner that played on one side of the field and didn't move based on where the ball was or anything like that.
That's great insight, Nick. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's awesome, man.
All right. What's the next play we've got here?
I think it's DJ Moore again. Shocker.
Yeah. all on the same 2 routes, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean they're pretty much similar plays the entire time. I mean is
there a way to focus in it all? Was this not? Am I wrong on this? That was offensive pass interference. Is that just something that's not going to get called against a rookie corner, or is he just too small? Is that the problem?
I think if that's offensive pass interference, then we're gonna have a lot of people.
It'd be called on every play if it was offensive pass interference. It's one of those. It's a veteran wide receiver move, but it's a typical veteran wide receiver move where it's a little bit of a throw by. When you're breaking off at the top of the route, you kind of extend your hand to help yourself break off and also kind of push the defender away a little bit.
It just uses their momentum against them, essentially.
Exactly. And it's a move that every good receiver in the league does. And that one wasn't a particularly strong one necessarily. So, that's never going to get called. Yeah.
I mean, this was kind of the theme of the entire night. I mean, that was the last play was kind of a zone bust, and this was just straight up man coverage, just disaster. I mean, right here at this point, you've already lost the rep. You have to just make the tackle now, and coming in high like that, You're just really never going to make a tackle on anyone coming in like that. And then he essentially missed a tackle twice on this play. He missed again there with Forrest missing as well.
And Mark, you kind of mentioned this earlier in the week that maybe they were so nervous about the run game that they kind of were switching back and forth between personnel, and or at least the way they were focusing on the defense, and they just got him out of a rhythm. We saw that 5-man front a ton in the preseason, and I think maybe both of us thought they would use it a bunch this year. I don't think they've used it at all. What is it that they're not doing to stop the run game here? I know that's not this play, but it makes me think that why aren't we getting there?
Well, it kind of meshes its way into this play in a way. They have been using the 5-man front a little bit, but their thing this year, or certainly in this Bears game, was they were terrified of. I think they were terrified of Justin Fields in the read option threat. Typically, when they had success last year, like you see here, they're in a 2-deep safety look, and they were happy to be light in the box because they're only going to give up 4 or 5 yards of carry most anyway. And if someone like Jonathan Allen or Daron Payne makes a play, it's 2 or 3 yards or less, and they can live like that. And then that gives them more flexibility in the pass game to play 2-deep coverages and quarters and match stuff. This game, and more frequently this year, they've been worried about the run game a little bit more. So you can see Cam Curl drops down into the box, and then that's in one part to help defend the run, to give them an extra body in the box to defend the run, but also on the back end of that, because they're not playing with 2 safeties deep, they're only playing with 1. Consequently, they decide to play more man coverage, and then that leads to kind of what we see here, where Forbes is left one-on-one against a receiver like DJ Moore, and he gets beat. And getting beat is no real shame. DJ Moore's a good receiver, very good receiver. He beats a lot of corners, and Emmanuel Forbes will get beat by receivers that aren't as good as him. The issue is more the tackling, as Nick pointed out. He kind of missed twice here, and that's obviously a problem. And so that's something that he's going to have to get fixed. And part of that, as I say, is because they're playing so much man coverage, that he's got nobody around him to really help him. There's maybe Cam Curl in the flat that came back, but when that ball's caught, there's basically nobody around. And when you're playing zone coverage, the whole idea is that the defense has vision on the quarterback. They can see the ball being thrown, and they can all rally to the ball to help make the tackle. And that's why you drafted Forbes. You drafted him to play zone, to sit in off coverage and break on things and use his instincts and his vision, and try to hunt the ball. And this style of defense doesn't necessarily suit that. And then he's left exposed out in space trying to make tackles when that's not necessarily his strong suit. That you can hide that to an extent if you're playing zone, because you've generally got 2 or 3 guys around to help assist the tackle. When you're playing man like this, you can be left in a lot of space, and he still needs to do a better job making the tackle, but he's also not receiving a hell of a lot of help either.
Looking at the play, DJ Moore's a pretty refined wide receiver. If Emmanuel Forbes tackled him at a point of contact, it's about a 7-yard gain. It's not the end of the world in regard to that. Obviously, Emmanuel Forbes kind of comes too high, is up on an island, and misses a tackle twice. You guys have a pretty more refined eye. A lot of fans, and even me, anecdotally, might say Forbes doesn't tackle well. Is that something that's kind of popping on tape to both of you guys a lot? Is it bad form? Is it effort? What are you guys saying?
I wouldn't say it's as much effort as it is form. And I had a problem with his tackling when I watched his college film.
Gotcha.
He's not afraid to try to tackle. He's not afraid to throw his body in the pile.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to just throw his head. He doesn't like to really wrap up as much.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw it a lot last week, I believe, where he's just kind of diving in and trying to trip somebody up by hitting his shoulder on his foot or something like that. Mm-hmm. He's not really wrapping up. And again, you can see here how high he goes into this tackle. I mean, he is literally helmet to helmet. DJ Moore's not at all trying to get low. It's just bad there. And then here at the end, he tries to make up for it by forcing a fumble, trying to punch, up through the pocket here, and it doesn't work out too well for him.
And who is that, 25 that can't catch him at the end?
Forrest missed here originally, and then St. Juice has to get back in gear and try to catch up to him.
Dude's fast.
But he's expecting Forrest to, at the very minimum, push him out of bounds. I'm not sure why Forrest kind of stops there. He's got to at least keep funneling. So,
Mark,
just all around pretty poor.
Mark, you brought up earlier the load in the box for the run. I mean, is that because they don't trust the linebackers? I mean, what is it about the difference between last year when they were so good at stopping the run, and I don't think overly concerned about it, knowing they do that on the way to the quarterback? It doesn't feel like they've done that this year.
Well, so the weird thing is I looked up the stat for this earlier, and last year Washington gave up an average of 4.4 yards a carry. This year it's only at 4.8 yards per carry. So obviously that's a relatively high number, and you don't want to be close to 5 yards a carry, but it's not like hugely worse than it was last year. It's a case of stylistically last year they were happy to let teams try to run the ball and put together those long, 10, 12 play drives that, they have to drive down the field and try to be penalty free and not get backed up and behind the chains. They have to try to, be perfect and flawless. And if they did, then great, but very rarely did they do that. And then usually Washington was able to stop things once it got to the red zone. But this year that they're more concerned about the run. And when you have a quarterback like Justin Fields that can add into the run game, like from that picture right there, it's 6 men in the box against 6 offensive linemen. So already they're light against the run. And when you don't have a quarterback that's involved in the run game, you can kind of be okay with that because there's 7 gaps there. There's 1 gap on each side of each blocker. So there's 7 gaps, and they can fill 6 of them, and they can do some stunts that make them fill the 7th gap and then kind of buy a gap back. But when you add in the threat of the quarterback to that, then you're suddenly 2 gaps down, or effectively 2 gaps down, and that's very hard to live in that kind of world where you're really fighting to get 2 gaps back. So that to me is why they're more concerned with it. Certainly in this game with Fields as a read option threat. Why it's a general theme, I'm not sure. They seem to be more concerned with giving up runs this year. I think Cody Barton does play into that because he has been poor. He is an issue. He is slow reacting to runs and diagnosing runs, and that's making him late and getting him reached or washed out of plays much easier than he should be. But on the flip side of that, Jamin Davis is playing at a much higher level than we saw him a lot last year. So yeah, they're getting better play from one and worse play from another linebacker. So they're in a tough spot, and I think in this situation it's just because they were worried about Fields as a runner. Yeah,
miss Cole Holcomb a lot.
What's ironic though to me, sorry to interrupt you guys, is that like from what I understand, when you have a mobile quarterback such as, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, it's kind of more prudent to have more of a zone offense to kind of keep their scrambling quarterback right in front of you. I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of baffled as to why they decided to go full man on this, but I guess that's neither here nor there, unless you guys have some input you want to add on to that.
Football, it's tough to the scheme, X's and O's, all that sort of stuff is very tough to understand, but at the bare basics of it, it's just numbers. It's simple math. You're always trying to get one more player instead of the offense or defense, essentially, is what you're trying to do. Yeah. And the way they structure the coverages will also help, or is part of how gaps are filled and run support and all that sort of stuff. Them, bringing down Curl here is, as Mark mentioned, is now that you have, you got the 5 offensive linemen and then the 6th running back and then the 7th possibly Justin Fields. Bringing Curl down, you now have 7 on 7.
Gotcha.
That's what you're doing. That's why they were so, wanting to bring down a safety is kind of reestablish their numbers, not advantage, but, kind of keep it equal.
Let it run. Does he get to the line by the time they snap? Why is he so late? Why is he so late to get down if he's supposed to be the extra man filling a gap?
Well, he has to read play action here, essentially. So he's reading the mesh point here. Once he sees that there's no threat of a run, he now has to drop back in.
He's he's got man coverage on the tight end, so he's reading the tight end
on this side.
And they were trying to show they're too high look pre-snap to disguise what they were in. And if you rotate down too early, then it kind of defeats the purpose of trying to disguise that. So it was trying to be having a little bit of a disguise, and yeah, he's also responsible for man coverage on the tight end. He's also on what would be probably the backside of this run, where the running back's aligned to his side. So typically the running back would be running away from him. So he has more time. It's on the guys on the other side to kind of force a cutback. And once that cutback comes, it's coming towards him, and that gives him more time to get down to the line of scrimmage to fill his gap. So that all kind of plays into it.
I know it's kind of put you on the spot. Maybe neither one of you know this, George. Maybe you know, but it feels like, and I haven't seen the numbers, that we were doing a lot more twist and stunts last year on this defensive line, and it doesn't feel like I'm seeing them like used to be. I felt last year that Duran and Jonathan would do a lot of playing around inside and moving around, and I haven't seen it. If they're doing it, I haven't noticed it. Have you guys? Anybody seen that? Noticed that?
I'd have to check. The company I work for, PFF. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them.
Little company called PFF.
They track all of that stuff, so I could get you a precise number. But I mean, I don't think it's any more or less than what they did in the past. I mean, maybe a bit less, but when you have the talent like Chase Young, Allen, Payne, and Sweat, you don't really need to create those pass rush advantages as much as some other teams. You do kind of expect them to just win more often than not. But yeah.
Cool. Let's go to the next play. Let's check it out. What's up next?
If you guys want to see DJ Moore, we got that one up.
Haven't heard him before. Let's try it out.
DJ Moore again. All right. So down in the red zone, coverages are always fun to try to figure out. Here it's kind of tough. They're essentially just playing a quarters red zone-ish look where you kind of condense everything down. But there's a lot of man principles in this. Essentially what you got here is Kemba Fuller, essentially kind of manned up. I don't know if they're bracketing. They might be. But here, I mean, this one's just a great throw and catch. I mean, Fuller's in a great spot. It's tough to play better defense than this. I mean, it's just a perfect throw. As you can see there, I mean, it's tough to kind of defend that there. That's just, type of play where you just kind of tip your cap and move on. It's an incredible throw and catch.
Did you boys find it difficult to study the film with these black uniforms on?
I kept thinking they were the Steelers, but no, I mean, I gotten used to them now. The first time they put them on, it was very, very weird. But
I wonder if the players have gotten used to them.
I don't know.
This is kind of Fuller just getting beat by a better receiver.
Yeah, pretty much.
I would say there's one note I have on this is that Fuller actually, as Nick says, he plays it pretty well. But just as they're transitioning out of the break, he kind of takes a little peek back to the ball, and there's a little misconception among fans about when a corner should and shouldn't look back for the ball, and it always seems to be if the pass is given up, they've done it wrong, and that's not necessarily true. Here, because of the technique he's playing, where he's opening his body to the sideline and he's guarding his receiver, he shouldn't really be looking back for the ball in this situation, because when he does that, he risks losing track of where the receiver is. And that's a little bit of what happens here. As Nick says, it's kind of, he doesn't exactly do a bad job, and it's a very, very good throw, and it's a very, very good catch. And Fuller still forces them to make a near perfect throw and perfect catch, but he just loses track of him just for a moment as he kind of looks back slightly.
It's like right there.
Yeah, he's just
turn his head.
He turns his head back, trying to locate the ball, and that gives Moore just that little bit of chance to create just the tiniest bit of separation, not even massive separation, but he just gets a half step on him, and that gives him the chance to, and Fuller kind of loses track of him, and then that gives him that opportunity to go up and make that play over him. And Fuller does a really good job of recovering, and he tries to play the ball through the hands of the receiver, which is the correct way of doing it, but he shouldn't really have been peeking at the ball. He should have been focusing on the receiver's hands, and that way he would have potentially been in a slightly better position to reach out and break up that pass. But that's maybe a little bit nitpicky, but it's probably what they would have been talking about.
It's crazy the nuance in the NFL, right? Just that little slip up is what gives up a touchdown right there, Other things that kind of stood out to me, for one, looking at the rest of the play, it looked like the Commanders had some pretty good coverage across the board for the most part. And I guess Justin Fields took their shot. They saw that little slight advantage, kind of threw it up there. I guess that ball has like a good probability of either the wide receiver catching it or going out of bounds, kind of a toss-up kind of ball right there. Also, gentlemen, is this technically a stop and go, or does stop and go, is that strictly relied on more like a fly route? What do you guys think in regard to that?
It's a bit of a stop and go, sluggo sort of thing, whatever you want
Gotcha.
to really call it. They probably have their own crazy term for it.
Gotcha.
But just a double move. He doesn't really bite on it. Does pretty well.
Yeah, it was interesting. I watched, I don't know if you guys have seen, Edelman was on a while ago on the New Heights podcast, and they were asking him about Randy Moss. And he said, one of the things that I learned from Randy was, one, he was a freako athlete, but two, he never put his hands up until the ball came so that the corner couldn't read. Because that's the other thing they teach, right, Mark, is read the hands. When their hands go up, yours got to go up. And that's what he said. Randy wouldn't put his up until the very last second.
Yeah, if you're playing in a kind of a man technique, as Fuller kind of gets into here, then you don't want to be looking back for the ball. You want to be focusing on your receiver and looking for hints from him when the ball's coming. And one of those hints is obviously when the receiver extends his hands to try to catch the ball. And some receivers will do that really early, and the good ones will do it extremely late. And obviously that makes it much harder to catch the ball, but it also makes it a lot harder to defend it. So it's a good point. It's a very good coaching point that you want to have late hands that make it much harder for the defender to get a read on.
Yeah, and I pointed that out last week with AJ Brown on their go ahead touchdown on the fourth quarter. He had the same thing. He's one of the best at it. Just late hands, like you said. And again, DJ Moore's kind of doing the same thing here. Ball's right there, and he's just now putting his hands up. So it's tough if you're not looking back at the ball to try to judge when that ball's coming, and you just don't really have a chance.
The fact is, this group's going to see a mobile quarterback almost every week, and they're going to see premier receivers almost every week.
That's the NFL.
Yeah.
All right, what we got next here?
That's enough of DJ Moore killing us.
Please.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Right.
So this one is the Sam Howell interception. Mark will probably do a much better job of describing, the play and the concept and all that sort of stuff. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about Howell and, processing speed and all that sort of stuff. And he's gotten light years better from what I saw at college and what we saw basically when he first started playing with Washington. But there's moments like this where it's just a tad slow and a little bit off. And I pointed it out last week on one of the throws where it was just slightly late, just like a tad bit late, but someone was so wide open that it didn't really matter. So you see the defense again, they rotate to single high kind of late. So you've got some sort of single high coverage. You see the play breakdown, and you're assuming man at this point with the linebacker kind of moving out, but he's reading this left side of the field. He's reading here, nothing's open. He moves back to the middle field. This is perfect timing. At this point, the ball needs to be kind of released. He's got to release it. He hesitates just a tiny bit. Ball's behind. And there's the pick for you.
This is the amazing thing when we start looking at the field. Sorry, Mark, we'll cut you off, but it's like we talk about all the time about inches and seconds, and you can see the plays opened up here. I mean, it's ready to go. To your point, Nick, I mean, get this thing out of here. Boom, it's on him. 45-yard line.
He does everything perfectly here. He starts with the correct read to the left, and he flips his head back to the middle. And for whatever reason, it's just not triggering right now. And then in the NFL, when you're even less than a second late on some things, it'll kind of bite you, especially if the ball's a little bit behind.
Have you seen improvement week to week, Nick, from the first week to now?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's been a lot better moments from him. There's still some, like we've seen it with the sacks and all that sort of stuff, where it's just like a tad slow.
Gotcha.
But he's gotten, like I said, light years better from when he first started.
Nick, will you run it back to the original with the yes. Mark, explain to us what's going on at the bottom of the screen and how they determine where that's going.
Yeah, so it's kind of a split field read for Howell here. We've got to the top of the screen, we've got what they call, I believe they called a Tampa Bay concept. Most West Coast offenses would call it a bow concept or a snag, where you have the outside receiver kind of sits down on what's called an arrow route. You have the running back working out to the flat, and then you have the slot receiver, or sometimes it's a tight end, runs a basic cross. Then on the that's a concept. If you don't know it, get used to it. It's something they're running like 3 or 4 times a game. So get used to it. I don't know exactly what they call it. I know the Andy Reid tree in general calls it Tampa Bay, and they call it that with the bay for the basic cross. If the slot receiver were to run a corner, they just call it the Tampa concept. But so yeah, that's what I've been calling it. But anyway, to the bottom of the screen, they've got basically a choice concept or an option route, where the inside receiver is running just a clearing out corner route. That's just designed to draw away coverage and vacate space underneath. And you got Logan Thomas as the tight end, who's lined up outside. He's motioning inside to give Howell a little bit of a pre-snap identification, and then he's running an option route where he's reading the coverage and he can either break inside, outside, or sit his route down depending on how the coverage plays out. And so the option route is always the kind of primary read on any play involving an option route. And so Howell is slightly late here because he is taking the extra second to read the option route. And if you play it through just a little bit to the point where Thomas is breaking, that safety runs down, which gives him kind of a man indicator. And Howell's looking to Thomas to think, I'm going there. That's the option route. That's where I want to go to. And he breaks inside, and that's where ideally you want your option route to break inside, because that gives him the most field to play with. But the linebacker in the hole has kind of seen exactly what's coming, and he slides over, and you can see there's that linebacker there kind of bracketing Thomas and ready to intercept that pass. So that delays Howell a little bit, because I think he probably thinks, I've got Logan Thomas here, I'm going to go there. And then he spots that linebacker sliding over that way, and suddenly that read isn't there. And that makes him then come back over to the other side of the field. And as Nick said, that ball needs to be out, like right there. Everything is done right. He's going to the right read. The read is open when he's looking at it. It's just that fraction of a second late. And that's, that just comes with learning the play and running it more often. And they've run that Tampa Bay concept to the top a ton. They haven't run it a huge amount with a tight end choice route combined with it on the other side. They have run it once or twice, but they haven't necessarily run it against this look. And that's something that it's a point that Eric Bieniemy has made a couple times in press conferences, where when you see something happen to Sam Howell, it's probably the first time he's seeing it happen. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that is a really important point to remember, that this is probably the first time that he sees how this look plays out against this kind of coverage. And that explains why he's just that beat slow. And I think if on Sunday they get this exact same look against this exact same play, I'm sure Howell will be much quicker to get to that basic cross over the middle and hit it for a first down.
Would you say the ball was improperly placed as well? Or is that just like, I know it was like a step slow, but it seemed like the ball was maybe behind him as opposed to in front of him. Is that safe to say, or is it just kind of like a bang bang play? It kind of happens that way. What do you guys think there?
It was a bit behind. I mean, you might be able to tell better from the end zone angle here. Okay. It's tough to tell with the DB breaking on it like that. And the wide receiver just kind of has to stop because he's kind of expecting the ball.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Is Logan Thomas the first read there, or is he on the? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the other thing with this, there was another play which we don't have here, but the catch that Jamison Crowder made over the middle. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So on that play, Crowder ran a similar route, though slightly deeper. And he noticed that Howell was just slightly late getting to him with the ball. And what he did was he gave away depth. So he came back towards Howell and lost a few yards that he could have made. But what he was doing was protecting Howell and the throw from the corner trying to undercut the route.
Gotcha.
What we see here is the defender is trying to undercut that route, and because the receiver, it's not necessarily the receiver's fault here. It's obviously not the receiver's fault here. Howell is late, but Jamison Crowder, being the kind of veteran and having run those routes over the middle, knows from experience that if that throw is coming just slightly late, that corner is going to be trying to undercut from behind. So when Crowder ran the similar route, instead of continuing to gain depth out of the break, he came back towards Howell. And that, like Nick has drawn up there, he came back towards him slightly, and that helped protect the ball from the defender trying to undercut it. So that's
once you kind of break here, what Mark is essentially saying is instead of kind of drifting it this way, more flat, more towards the quarterback sort of thing.
Gotcha.
Exactly. And that's not...
Was that Terry?
That's Samuel, right?
That's Samuel. And it's not necessarily a thing on a receiver that you expect them to do. It's just a case of Jamison Crowder is a really experienced receiver. He's seen a lot of looks, and he's a guy that knows when he goes over the middle, if that ball's not perfectly on time, the guy behind him is a threat to undercut it. So he made a really nice veteran move to kind of help Howell out. Where it's not a criticism of Samuel at all. It's just a note that's a thing that a real experienced veteran like Crowder can help out a quarterback in that kind of situation.
It was interesting. Terry and Dotson combined for an 18% target share in the last game. Is that toe bothering Terry more than he lets on, do you think? Have you seen it on tape at least?
I can't say I've seen him looking bad. It did feel like he didn't play as much as he normally does, but I don't think the snap counts necessarily reflect that. I think it's just kind of a case of the offense is the offense, and it's not a type of offense or a system where they have to force feed one receiver the ball. It's the type of offense where you want the quarterback to be reading everything out properly, and whichever receiver is getting open is going to get the ball. And they've got a bunch of weapons. Yes, Terry McLaurin needs his targets, but they've got Jahan Dotson, they've got Curtis Samuel, they've got Logan Thomas, they've got Gibson out the backfield. They've got a ton of weapons, and any one of those guys can make plays after the catch. So yes, they need to make sure McLaurin gets his touches, but and they did some things against the Eagles early on to kind of force feed McLaurin the ball a little bit more. But it's not something that I think they're intent on doing too much. I think they would rather have experience of reading out plays properly and getting to the right place with the ball, rather than having him learn just to focus on where's Terry. I'm going to throw to Terry no matter what.
The Taylor Heineke special.
Exactly. You want him to be learning to be an overall better player rather than just relying on one receiver, because then if McLaurin goes down, then his safety blanket's gone and he's suddenly struggling. So, you want the quarterback to be able to distribute to whichever receiver is getting open.
It feels like they're finally using Samuel the way I think we thought that they would when he first got here, which is nice.
Speaking of Terry McLaurin, this is just, Mark can break down the concept a lot better than I ever would, but this is just a perfect pass from Sam Howell. It's not all bad. There was a lot of good from Sam Howell. It showed off his arm talent, showed off his processing skill. I think there's a lot to really like about Howell. I mean, when you ask anyone to drop back almost 60 times in a game, it's going to be tough on them. Yeah. That's just kind of what they had to do with the hole that they put themselves in. But
55 straight is the PFF record, right, Nick?
That's what my coworker said. I don't know where he got the number from, but I will believe him. So
it seems like a lot of players are open too. Didn't Samuel kind of break up
concept,
right there too?
Yes, right.
Yeah. Well, so to start this play, Howell is looking off to his left. He's looking to Jahan Dotson on that speed out, and the player in coverage kind of stays with him pretty well. So the natural progression of the read is you kind of work your way back across the field from left to right. And so McLaurin is the very next guy coming into Howell's vision, which is a very nice play design that you have. He's looking out to Jahan Dotson. It's not there. So he's coming back across, and you can see that they're playing some sort of man coverage where that 30. I think 31's a safety, but maybe he's a slot corner. But he's losing Samuel, but he's still running with Samuel, which means there's going to be space for McLaurin when he crosses from the other side of the field. And so the only real, you can see there the safety still trailing Samuel, and so
he's wide open.
So Samuel is open, but the next throw in the read is McLaurin, and you know that there's a ton of space for McLaurin to be working into as well. And actually,
real quick, Mark, explain that, because I think people will be confused. I think a lot of people are going to look at this and say, you've got to get the ball to the guy wide up in the middle of the field. Just explain that that's not how it works in an NFL system.
Yeah, so it depends on how the read is taught, but on this one, to me, it looks like a progression read. So you have Jahan Dotson at the bottom of the screen. If you go back to the start of it, where the diagram's up, you have Jahan Dotson at the bottom on the speed out as your number one. So if you want to put a 1 there, and then if you put it at the end of his route, so that you can see where.
See, this is why he does the diagram stuff.
So you have that number 1 there, and then if Howell's already looking out to his left, you want the read to naturally progress as he works inside. So it goes 2 to Terry McLaurin, and then it goes 3 to Curtis Samuel, and then it would go 4 to that backside dig, or those two might swap around depending on the timing of how they kind of play out. But
I see what you're saying there.
So the second read comes into play naturally into Sam Howell's vision because he started looking left. That second route, that McLaurin over route, comes into his vision naturally. And if we go back to where we were, where the McLaurin and Samuel were breaking across the middle of the field, we'll see right here. You can see that actually behind where that safety is trailing Samuel, there's a ton of space.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so there's also a ton of space there. And in fact, on the backside, there's that Logan Thomas route is kind of taking up some of the space of where Samuel's running to. So the right read is to throw to McLaurin. And actually, Jahan Dotson kind of gets in his way here because Jahan Dotson, when he doesn't get the throw on the out route, turns up the sideline and kind of goes off script a little bit. And that brings that corner into play to tackling McLaurin. If Dotson stays low, then it's McLaurin one-on-one on that safety. But as Nick said, this throw is fantastic. Howell has to kind of show a little bit of touch to not just loop that ball over the top of the underneath coverage, but still have enough velocity on it to get it to McLaurin in stride. And it's a perfect throw that drops over his shoulder. And McLaurin doesn't break stride at all. He catches over the shoulder and is able to keep running. And as I say, if Dotson stays low after his break, that corner isn't there, and you're looking at Terry one-on-one against the safety, which maybe the safety makes the play, but I'd still back Terry to break a tackle there.
Sounds like Mark just loves blaming these receivers, huh?
So Mark and Nick, on the last 2 plays we kind of broke down and diagrammed, it seemed like they went from like short to deep in regard to progressions. Is that kind of like a natural NFL like method, or is that kind of an Eric Bieniemy kind of method as well, or just coincidence because we saw 2 plays where it was like a quick play, then Nevada's in there, just go deeper? What do you see? What happens there?
That one it's just a coincidence. It's not necessarily a theme of the offense to look short to quick.
Gotcha.
Sorry, short to long. It's very much a play-by-play basis, and these plays are diagrammed to beat specific coverages that they're expecting to get. And so if that first route to Jahan Dotson probably is open quite often because Dotson's a very good runner on those speed outs. And if that corner doesn't play it as well as he does, like you can see how he gains width as he drops back. He's anticipating that break outside. So that kind of takes away Dotson's leverage to cut out, and that takes away that option. If that corner had stayed a little bit more square, Dotson probably wins that route and that ball goes outside, and then Dotson has that chance to break up the sideline and have nobody tackling him. So it's very much just an individual basis, play by play. It's not an offense where they intentionally say you read every play low to high or high to low. It's just a play by play thing.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, what you got next, Nick?
We got a lot more Howell stuff.
I love it.
He's made some upper level throws, there's no doubt.
I guess Nick and Mark, anecdotally, before we dive into the play, there was like a it just seemed like Howell was very polarizing after the game. Like, I thought he was played admirably, and I thought he had a pretty good game. But then, like, you go on social media and people are bashing him for whatever reason. Do you think that was uncalled for, or how do you guys feel about that?
That's just Monday morning quarterback.
Monday morning quarterbacks. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
If I mentioned this when I've been on other podcasts or radios and whatnot, it's if you were down on Sam Howell going into the year, you're going to keep doing that because the sack problems are still continuing. That's a trend that's continued from college. If you were high on Sam Howell, you are even more higher now because in college, my biggest concern with him was the sacks and the slow progression, and the offense he played in did not really lend himself to see anything like this. Like you didn't see a lot of the reads that we just showed you in the UNC sort of offense. So for me, I'm higher on Sam Howell now because you see him going through these sort of, progressions. And he's, again, there are still some plays, like we pointed out, that he is a tad bit late. But as Mark pointed out, that these are the first time he's seeing any of these sort of things. And so it's going to be a little bit late, but he does not typically make the same mistake twice unless we're talking about the Bills game.
A great trait.
Well, the Bills defense is going to do that for a lot of folks. Do you like that EB's out there, like making him sling the ball around instead of kind of trying to protect him with the run game? Right. Get him out there and let's work, right?
Trial by fire is my favorite thing to do. Throw them in there. If they can swim, they can swim. If they can't, they can't.
Yeah. All right, let's see it.
So do you want me to take over this one, Nick?
Yeah, I haven't even seen this play, so this is all you.
Right. Well, there's actually in this clip, there's 3 separate plays. It's all about beating the blitz. And something that we've talked a lot about with Howell is taking sacks and taking too long to get the ball out. And in this game, there were a few times where the Bears blitzed him and he didn't pick it up. He didn't see it. And that resulted in a sack. But generally speaking, in this game, he did a much better job of identifying blitzes and finding ways to beat them and get the ball out quickly. And this first play is a good example of that here. We've got one linebacker blitzing in up the middle, and that means the other linebacker that is out leveraged has to try to get to the running back in the flat. So that gives Robinson a real advantage as he's running to the flat because the linebacker is so out leveraged, and he having to make up so much ground. And as you can see, when Robinson gets the ball, the linebacker is late getting there and makes a poor tackle attempt, and Robinson's able to break that tackle and get up the field. But the important thing here from Sam Howell is that he was able to recognize that linebacker is blitzing up the middle. You can even see him there point to Robinson just before that snap. He's kind of given a little signal, hey, Robinson, you make sure you're getting out to the flat, you're fine. And he sees that linebacker coming and is immediately ready to throw that ball out to the flat because he knows he's got that other linebacker out leveraged. And so when you see a quarterback doing this kind of thing, identifying the blitzes and getting the ball out quickly to out leverage players that are getting beat because of the blitz, then that's a sign that, Sam Howell can reduce these sack numbers because he's starting to see more blitzes and identify more things and get the ball out quicker, make the adjustments that are needed to get the ball out quicker. And, the linebacker here comes completely free up the middle. He's completely unblocked, but Howell beats him because he knows what's coming and he knows how to get the ball out and where he's going with it.
Hard to know without protections, Nick, Mark, but is that on Gates or is this, they let him go and this is, as they say, the quarterback's responsibility?
It would be tough to put it on Gates. I mean,
right. But some of these are the quarterback's responsibility, right? Like, somebody's coming, you got to figure it out and get it out.
It's called like you're hot, essentially. Like, that you don't have enough blockers for the amount of people they're going to send. The ball has to come out. The offensive line is sliding to half slide. They're sliding to the left. So Leno's going to go this way like that. Gates is looking to help over here. It would be a very impressive block if he's able to kind of turn his head around and pick up 53, but you're really never going to ask him to do that.
Hey, gentlemen, sorry to interrupt you. We have a question in the chat. Caleb is saying, have you seen enough from Sam Howell to be confident in him moving forward as potentially a quarterback to build around? How do you guys feel about that?
I think there's been a lot of progression and there is a lot of potential and the raw talent from Sam Howell is there. I think jumping to any kind of conclusion, good or bad, at 5 games into the season and 6 games into his career is probably not what anyone should be doing. I think you take it game by game, this one was a step forward for him, in my opinion. The Eagles game was a big step forward for him, in my opinion. And those are two positives. But obviously, the game before that, the Bills game, was a step backwards. So you have to kind of let him breathe, let the season breathe, and at the end of the year, you can then start to get a clearer picture of where he's at, and trust that, okay, it wasn't just 1 or 2 good games here and 5 bad games, or it wasn't just 1 or 2 bad games and 5 good games. It was, the course of the season, he showed progress in multiple key areas, and he did a good job. So I tend to lean right now towards, if I ever had to pick, he's showing enough potential and talent and progression that he's something to stay working with going forward. But
he's interesting, right?
There's the hot take everyone needed. That's all they were waiting for.
Mark Bullock said, yeah, exactly.
It's tough. Like, I mean, football, like, fans just want a yes or no. Like, they want, is he the guy or is he not the guy? And as we should know, that it's going to take a lot of time. Like, this is his 6th start ever.
Yeah.
I mean, and the second offense now that he's had to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mark said, I think he's shown some steps, but there's still some stuff that you're going to need to really fix if you want to be a future franchise quarterback.
I totally agree. I agree with you.
I've been very happy with what I've seen so far. I've been more excited about what I've seen from him than a lot of other quarterbacks in the past.
Gotcha. Thank you.
That's not saying much because we saw some pretty bad quarterbacks. But,
Carson Wentz? Checking.
I've been pretty impressed so far. Good.
So yeah, there's 3 sacks in this, but I don't know if we want to cover all of them. I don't know how long we want to run this, but this one here was the other one that I wanted to point out, where the Bears had been kind of sending this slot corner blitz at him all game, and it's something that quite a few teams have been running at him, and they add on top of it by doing a similar thing to what we just saw, where one linebacker blitzes. They have both of them in the A gaps, but one drops out and one blitzes. And if you just run the play on for like a second after the snap, when Sam Howell kind of receives the snap, you see that Curtis Samuel kind of pauses just a little bit there, thinking that slot corner is coming. And typically the receiver, when they see a slot blitz, they kind of peel off and sit down and are ready for any kind of hot throw. Mm-hmm. But when we get to the end zone angle, you'll see that linebacker kind of drops into where Sam Howell's looking to throw, and it makes it kind of a rough throwing window. And Howell knows that, in theory, I think Antonio Gibson possibly blows a protection here, but that's by the by. In theory, he has enough guys to pick up that blitz, so he's got a little bit more time than he doesn't have to get that ball out immediately. He can wait a little bit, and so he waits for the second window where Samuel kind of bends his route behind that linebacker and then throws it over the top of him. And again, it's another example of him understanding what's coming, knowing his protection, trusting his protection, knowing where he needs to go with the ball, and then reacting. That linebacker drops out into his throwing window, but he doesn't panic. He stays patient. He knows that he's got Samuel running behind him, and he's got that kind of second throwing lane to put that ball over the top of the linebacker and complete that pass for a first down against a relatively decent blitz from.
Yeah, Mark, to be clear, you think Gibson should have chipped on 99 before he bounced out? Is that what you're saying, or what are you thinking there?
No, I think Gibson probably was responsible for that slot corner, or the linebacker. They have a partial slide. Yeah, they have a partial slide going that way, and I feel like Gibson should be reading one of those guys, and he doesn't. And he kind of.
I see what you're saying. Perfect.
Usually, the keys for running backs is they're going to be picking up a linebacker or a corner. They're never really going to be asked to pick up a defensive lineman.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Now, Nick, interestingly, we've talked about the record of consecutive passes. I believe, per your company, that the Commanders have used the least amount of extra men in the box. They've run the most 5-man sets in the league. It's one thing to ask the quarterback to throw it 55 times. It's another thing to ask the line that feels like has had its moments of weaknesses, just again out there trial by fire. Do you like the trial by fire the same way with your offensive line that you do the quarterback?
I do. I'm not as low on the offensive line as a lot of other people are. I think that a big thing is the quarterback controls his pressure rate. Like to the most part, he's responsible for a lot of it. And again, as Mark pointed out, you can see here with the way this corner blitz is coming from, you know how your protection is going to be. You know that you're going to have these 3 guys sliding to the right. And so once 49 drops out, you know you're going to have these 3 at the very worst over these 3 guys at the absolute minimum. I think Mark's right, and Gibson should either get or should probably get the corner here. But again,
you can see the corner move into the hole right there in front of the center right. Keep going. There.
Yeah. So for Howell, you need to know that. And again, it's really nice to see, again, there's a slight drift in the pocket because, again, you know where that blitz is coming from. Avoids it just a little bit. And that's the pocket management that you want to see from a young quarterback. A lot of times quarterbacks will just, once this first window's gone, they kind of panic and just either bolt out of there, move on. But it is nice to see him kind of hang in there and get hit, still deliver a pretty accurate ball.
Mark, were you surprised to hear Leno's comments about the end of this game and how he thought maybe they should have, conceded and started running the ball?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised, but at the same time, he's an offensive lineman, and every offensive lineman lives to be running the ball. So that makes a little bit of sense. But I was a little bit surprised to hear him say those things. But I don't know. I agree with Nick. I like them throwing the ball a lot. I like them expediting Howell's progression, and you're seeing how well he can develop, and you're, by the end of the year, you'll have a very good idea. If they keep throwing at this rate, you'll have a very good idea of what you have in him, and whether he's going to be worth staying with and developing more, or whether he's going to be someone that you want to move on from. And that's, at this point, that's kind of what the whole point of this season is to see what you have in, and the ownership will be thinking not just how, the whole regime, who's worth keeping, who's not, and you want the clearest evaluation of everyone, and the most important is obviously the quarterback. So yeah, I think getting to see him throw the ball more is just helping, really.
All right, let's wrap up with this one. This is the touchdown here, right?
Yep, and this is one more example of, again, they're running another slot blitz. It's actually a cover 0, and they're trying to disguise it as some sort of coverage. But the slot
quickly explain the cover 0, Mark.
Yeah, so cover 0 is essentially you have all 5 eligible receivers are given a single defender to cover in man-to-man coverage. So you've got those guys as Nick's drawing that up here.
Not sure who blitzes here, but
I think you're
on that.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have everyone lined up man-to-man coverage, and everyone else blitzes. And so in theory, for the defense, that guarantees you one free rusher that the offense cannot pick up. Because even if, say, the running back stays in to protect, then the extra linebacker is going to rush. So we can see here, they get that free rusher off the edge. The slot corner comes off the edge completely free, but there's no safety help anywhere around. And in fact, the safety is trying to cover Curtis Samuel. And because of the disguised look that they were going with, that safety is incredibly out leveraged.
Wow.
So
great route.
It's a good route. It's also a perfect call for the type of coverage they were getting there. And
I think they might have to switch. I don't know up at the top if they would have to switch that or not. But again, I feel like if there's an outbreaking route from the leverage that he's playing at, I feel like you would switch that.
Yeah, ideally you would probably switch that. And possibly the safety was looking for that and the corner wasn't. But yeah, it's a good job. It's another example for me of how seeing a blitz and identifying where the weakness is, being able to throw over the blitz, and because that's the thing with blitzes. Yes, you're under pressure a lot quicker, but there's less guys in coverage, and there's opportunities to attack and create explosive plays if you can process it quickly and get the ball out quickly. Yeah. And that's exactly what we see from Howell here. He doesn't panic that corner's coming free. He knows that corner's coming free, and he's more than happy to let him come free because he knows the safety's out leveraged, and he's got Curtis Samuel free in the end zone for a touchdown.
Yeah, and Nick, I think you're right. That safety does, that's the beauty of the play, right? It gives a little distraction, but watch, he definitely drops.
Yeah,
right there. Yeah, You nailed it.
I mean, he is assuming he's getting help. The way the left corner plays this, I think he is never even thinking about feeling off.
Now you can see him drop his hips here.
I'd be curious to see who we charge with this one. But this is why people hate PFF, this play right here.
The beauty of it for Washington as well is if you pause it at the point that the safety does start to stutter, like he's probably not going to get back into that under route anyway. So
it's over.
Even
might
if
as well just keep going. I mean, you're kind of screwed either way.
And even if, from Sam Howell's perspective, even if that safety does peel off and that outside corner drops back, he's got, I'm not sure who that is. I think it's Terry McLaurin running basically a slant wide open underneath. So he's probably got a touchdown either way.
Yep. And again, it's just knowing where the blitz is coming from and knowing where your protection is. I mean, just kind of based on this look, they're going to half slide to the left again. So you've got these kind of three guys kicking out, looking at these four over here, and you know that you're going to have too many rushers on the right side. You know that with that corner blitz coming, you have 3 over 2. You got to get the ball out, and he does.
And Nick, just curious, I guess I didn't see the beginning of the play. Why would they slide left as opposed to right there if they're anticipating a blitz?
It's numbers really.
Okay.
So essentially you've got 3 threats right here within the box.
Gotcha.
Kind of counting who's in the box. They're not
5.
counting. They probably aren't really counting 22. I don't know if they are, but and you've got 4 threats here.
Gotcha.
So you're just going to slide to essentially where
it's all a number game. You're right.
Dangerous. Again, football's numbers. It's numbers and geometry. It's numbers and leverage, and that's really
that's the other point there is that if that slot corner is coming, he's the guy that's furthest away. So he's the guy that's going to take longest to get to Sam Howell.
Makes sense.
And especially
it's why you see it's why you see a lot of times with linemen, you'll see there was a clip that for the Giants right tackle Evan Neal that went viral of him not blocking a defensive end that's rushing right by him. But you're taught as an offensive lineman is to take away the quickest path to the quarterback. So you're always going to block down essentially. So.
Yeah, he got excoriated on Twitter for calling him out when it apparently wasn't Neal's fault.
It wasn't at all his fault. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. But that's football Twitter for you.
Well, either which way, he's still got about 1 million views telling him what a donk he was.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
They all count for views, I guess.
That's true.
Well, fellas, I think
this
is what we've got here. Mark, I'm sorry, what'd you say, bud?
No, I was just saying that was the last of those clips that I had. So that was.
It was excellent stuff. George, you learned something today? I know I did.
100%. I really, it's like a tutorial. I'm just sitting back and relaxing. I appreciate it, fellas. Thank you for everything. That was great work.
All right. And as always, for those of you watching, if you want to see a particular play diagnosed or drawn up, let us know. Hit us in the comments for next week as we'll put out the show early so you can write them in. Fellas, thank you so much. And we will see you next Tuesday.
Yeah. See you guys.